happy to have a huge panelist this time. We're very happy to know that we're going to be talking about barriers in green jobs in New Jersey. And leading the panelists as the moderator is George Gore.
Today we're going to be talking about barriers to green jobs in New Jersey. It's a long discussed issue. We've discussed it many times. We're going to take another crack at it. Look at the session before us. We talked about clean energy and clean energy fund. Now we're going to move on to talk about the actual jobs themselves. What kind of jobs can we expect, okay, in this upcoming environment? Because things are about to change. You have solar, you have wind, we have changes in the technology, and it's going to create a whole new series of jobs. Sitting on the panel today, we have Andre Thomas from ISLES, Sid Nation from Vice President of Rising Powers Limited. We have Tompkins from Jobs to Move to North America. Kathryn, you're going to tell us when you get to speak where you're from. Okay.
You got it. Perfect.
Okay. Melissa Miles from New Jersey Environmental Justice. Nicky from New Jersey Alliance, Kean University. I'm going to start off with you, Andre. You get to be the first one out of block.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Andre Thomas. I'm the Senior Training Manager at ISLES. And ISLES' mission is fostering self-reliant families and healthy, sustainable communities. I teach lead training, and I've been doing that since 2009. Where folks come in, there's a law that states that anyone doing pre-1978 renovation must be certified. So I do that training. And, you know, over the years, I've seen a trend change where policy affects the folks that come into our program to be trained. And through those structures, a lot of jobs are created. But there's some challenges. There are multiple issues that affect both New Jersey energy efficiency and lead remediation and abatement programs. They are similar, and these programs are very similar to federal programs, but these are difficult and impossible things that we need to change at the state level. The good news that most of all these issues can be affected at the state level by making some very simple yet critical programmatic rule changes. And these rule changes helps to increase the demand for green jobs. And I think that's critical. And from my experience, when you address it at the policy level, and we've worked with organizations like New Jersey Renews, Environmental Justice, all of these programs that really fight on a policy level to really engage vulnerable communities, because we have serious challenges with coming to engage those communities that's going to create jobs even for those communities. And I just wanted to highlight a few. One, having a unified and comprehensive communication plan to reach the low-income customer and program information and reason for participation. Those folks that are actually, because we actually go into the homes and identify serious health issues, structural issues, so that we can go in to do the energy efficiency work. And that creates jobs in itself. When you address the structural issues in these homes, because folks are living in unhealthy conditions, and these homes are in need of work. So that creates a workforce for that. But once we do that work, and then the energy efficiency should go in, because our mission is not only to provide energy efficiency measures that impacts New Jersey's carbon footprint, but also we want to make the residents of New Jersey healthier by addressing the issues in the home. And in order to do that, you need a trained workforce. Currently, we're doing a program with PSEG where we're actually engaging folks to get into this green job field. And PSEG is helping us to recruit customers, helping us to recruit workers. And we have a pretty good structure in place now where we're getting folks from all over the state. They come to get our training. Prior to that, they work with the on-the-job training with PSEG, where they're getting some basic energy efficiency training. Then they'll come to us to get to really add on to that, and then they'll get jobs in that field. But it's limited, so we would like more funding so that we can address the need for more jobs. Because when you address these needs, who we care about the most, the customers, the folks that are going to be impacted by the work that this workforce does is critical, making our community healthier and energy efficient. We've had some successes. IOS is a part of an EV program that's going to bring electric vehicles to Trenton. That's going to help some of the transportation issues that we've had. And that's going to create even more jobs. But in order to really create the demand for the workforce that we're developing, we have to also address some other critical issues with addressing the customers. And some of the things that we ran into with the low income community is some of the state requirements to get the work, the eligibility. So to make application process and documentation requirements less burdensome, these are the first and foremost health programs that will help, that supports healthy housing. But in order to get the work, we have to get over some of the hurdles of requiring some of the documentation that we deem is not as necessary to deal with a health issue of a home. And when you do that, it'll create more demand for the jobs that we're training folks up to do, because you can't make a home efficient until you make it safe. And when you address the lead, the structural issues, the asbestos, the roofing, all of those issues that makes a home healthier and performing at a higher level creates jobs. So we want to be at the forefront doing that. We've been doing it. We encourage additional community partners. Like I said, we're working with PSEG. But to sustain it, we're going to need additional funding because we run into a lot of issues where these issues are concerned. So I'm glad to have the panel here, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of their input with this, because we're constantly trying to correct ourselves and get better. And we know that funding really helps to make all the work that we do possible.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Sid, from Vice President of Rising Light and Power.
Thank you so much. My name is Sid Nathan, Vice President of Rise Light and Power. I want to thank the audience, the virtual audience, and all the panelists here. I'll try to keep it short. We are a regional clean energy developer and energy asset manager. And we own and operate New York City's largest fossil plant, which is called the Ravenswood Generating Station, and also own a site in South Amboy, the former coal-fired power plant called the Werner Generating Station. And we have a really unique mission. Our mission is to transform those legacy fossil fuel power plants into hubs of clean energy. And our capital partner is LS Power, and it's a really unique mission that we see being a model for other fossil units across New Jersey, New York, and across the country. And let me just talk about kind of two principles that we view this topic that we're here to discuss by. Number one, and something that I think we could all agree on, we are in the middle of a global renewable energy transformation. And that means there are going to be jobs locally and jobs globally. And we need to figure out how to train the local communities to actually be part of that clean energy transformation. Number two, and this shouldn't be controversial, but environmental injustice and the power generation sector have known each other for quite a while. And particularly in communities of color who have been burdened by local peaking emissions and carbon emitting power plants. That is kind of the lens in which we come into this field and say that in order to break that cycle, we need to invest in these legacy fossil units, convert them into hubs of clean energy, but at the same time involve the local community to make sure that the jobs that are brought into that fold work with and are for the frontline community. We talk about frontline communities. Well, they should be front in line for the access to clean energy and all the benefits that it brings. So let me give you actually a really specific example, and I haven't done this on a panel before, so let's see how it goes. We just announced a partnership with Rapano Port and Rail in South Jersey, where we will develop the first cable manufacturing hub in the state of New Jersey, in our region, for offshore wind cables. So all of that offshore wind activity that we're all talking about off the Atlantic and how it comes into our shore is going to require cabling. And it's going to require folks to actually build and manufacture the cables. Well, why would we do that overseas? Why not do it here in the state of New Jersey? And the only operating cable manufacturer is down in South Carolina. So we could do that here, and we can actually train the workforce with actual jobs in the cable manufacturing center. So when I talk about those type of jobs, let's get specific, because we think about cable manufacturing and renewable energy jobs as there might be a large barrier to entry to actually get into those. Let me dispel that for a little bit. There are definitely jobs. For example, let me run through a list. Just in that cable manufacturing that I talked about. Cable manufacturing supervisor, production foreman, product handler, material preparation and cutting technician, safety engineer, automation IT engineer, quality engineer. So those are highly specialized workforces. But you also need sales representative, diversity and outreach managers, purchasing agents, office managers, HR managers. These are all parts of a clean energy workforce. That doesn't mean that a clean energy job requires somebody to physically put a turbine offshore. I need to dispel the myth that there are highly specialized jobs just in the clean energy industry. We can make this equitable. We can make this inclusive of communities across New Jersey, but especially those of color. And so, again, I want to thank my panelists, and also just mention kind of finally that our local workforce should mirror the communities that we serve. And in order to do that, we need to train. We need to work with faith-based leadership to invest in training and opportunities to make sure that folks can get to the jobs that I just mentioned and then some. So I thank everybody.
All right. You're up.
All right. Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Albie Delgado. I am with Sunny Max Solar. My mantra is the solar guy. So I help homeowners that want to go green with clean renewable energy with the power of solar panels. The biggest thing in my field is education, because there are a lot of misconceptions and myths out there that solar is free, solar is expensive, you need a giant down payment, things of that sort. So my job is to try to, again, educate the consumer. Again, what we do is we help homeowners because there is a different way. Because right now, the utility companies, the national averages, their rates go up about 2.9% a year, which is the national average. My thing is with solar, I'm going to show you how you can actually own your electricity, avoid any rate increases, and save yourself a bunch of money. Things that we do is we do offer financing. We help people with all types of credit. Obviously, the higher your credit score, the more we can do. We can provide 100% financing with credit scores down to 600. And if you know anything about the solar industry, that's a very, very promising opportunity, because the majority of the solar companies out there want a 650, 680 credit score, but I can go down to 600. The other thing is the federal government does give a 26% federal tax credit when you decide to go solar. And then also the state government will actually pay you for 15 years for going solar. So they're obviously trying to incentivize the homeowner to take advantage of these opportunities. So basically what we do is, when I speak to a homeowner, I get their address, I go to Google Maps, I look at their satellite view of their house. Number one is there any shading issues with trees? If there's not, I get a copy of their electric bill. We do a 12-month analysis, so we know the last 12 months what their usage was. So let's say, for example, they use 10,000 kilowatts. And then what we do is we build a design based on their usage, based on how much roof space they have, how the house is positioned towards the sun. All that data is collected, given to my design team, and then within 24 hours, I know exactly what I can do and how much I can save that homeowner. Some things we also do, if somebody says, hey, I wanted to go solar, but I have tree issues. I have trees in front of my house. Good news is, we do offer tree removal. We can include that in the financing as well. If somebody says, hey, I wanted to get solar, but my roof's 20 years old, what do I do? Well, good news there. We have a division that uses Owens Corning, which is a top tier manufacturer. It does come with a 50-year warranty, and we can also include that in the financing. And the other thing is we look for other ways that people don't realize that their energy costs have increased. So if they have a swimming pool, they have a hot tub, they have a heat pump, they have an electric car, You know, a lot of people are working out of their house. A lot of people have their, you know, grown kids living at their house, and they're using a lot of electricity. So again, it's all about education, helping the homeowner, the consumer, to find out that there is another way. And there's also a federal mandate by 2030 that the utility company has to have at least 30% of their consumers using some sort of renewable energy, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, what have you. And so again, this is something that is, you know, here. It's here to help the homeowners that are looking for another way. And I actually brought some postcards. We do have a great promotion right now for homeowners that do go green with us. We have some incentives for them as well. And I'm here to answer any questions after. And I thank you for your time.
We'll post that online.
Thank you.
Kathryn?
My name is Kathryn Zielnski. That's okay. My name is Kathryn Zielnski. I am a business support specialist for PSEG Clean Energy Jobs Program. Our goal is to generate 2,000 economic opportunities for historically underserved communities throughout New Jersey, targeting low to middle income residents. PSEG's role is to act as a broker between job seeker and job supplier. The whole day we've really been talking about how New Jersey has a commitment to a greener future. So our role is to try to upskill the work, to address that skill gap between the job seekers that are out there. The way we plan to do this are really through three initiatives, the one being jobs recruiting. On the end, we have Andre from Isles, actually, who is one of our community partners. Through the New Jersey Department of Labor, we daily and weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings with our steering committee, and this is included of community leaders and organizations across the state that we can meet with and kind of have our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community today and some of the barriers that they're facing. Our community partners help us provide referrals, and they also help provide wraparound services. I'm just going to go quickly into what wraparound services are for anybody that doesn't know. Wraparound services could be supportive, like housing assistance, transportation. If anybody took a toll on the way here, they get what I'm saying, or childcare. Another is workforce readiness. Another is workforce readiness. And this is where it kind of comes into training as well, where we address that skills gap, providing financial literacy, or we like to highlight our on the job training program, which is where we have a 6-month paid living wage where people can learn while they earn, and then essentially get placed with one of our EE job suppliers. With all these great initiatives that there's a high demand out there in the state today. And then lastly, we do have a focus on diversity. We have worked with the New Jersey African American Chamber of Commerce and have helped sign up over 70 plus businesses to get their MWVBE certification. And then we also pair them up with PSEG mentors to walk them through different program initiatives throughout the state. Yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, I can answer more later.
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, great. Hi, it's really nice to see some familiar faces. I feel like this is like a small reunion in a room. And also to meet some new folks, especially who I haven't met in real life before. So like George mentioned, I work with Jobs to Move America, and we are a national organization, and I specifically organize with our New Jersey program, which is actually pretty new. So I'm feeling really excited about getting to kind of build relationships with all of you and do this work with all of you. I think there's like a lot of room to kind of shape the direction that we go in right now. So our mission really is to build a green economy that is accountable to communities and to workers, which I think really fits in nicely with what a lot of other folks on this panel are talking about. And we specifically leverage public purchasing, which is basically, or procurement, basically all the goods and services that our governments buy. And I'm going to focus specifically on the state level right now. But as we know, New Jersey is making a really, really massive public investment in building out a green economy, offshore wind, vehicle electrification, charging infrastructure, all that stuff. So if we think about all that money being spent, that is a massive opportunity. We really believe we can be addressing the climate crisis and also transforming our economy, building a more just economy at the same time. And all the public dollars that we're spending on green infrastructure in New Jersey can and should come right back into New Jersey communities in the form of good paying jobs, in the form of good benefits and care for workers and their families, in the form of training and career development, different kinds of community investments. So this is our public money and it should be reinvested back in our communities. We also believe that every tier of the green supply chain can really drive good jobs and community investments. So we do a lot of work with manufacturing specifically and encouraging good paying manufacturers, specifically green manufacturers, to set up in the state, but also things like installation of infrastructure or servicing and maintenance of electric vehicles, public transit vehicles. All of those are existing, new and existing jobs that we can be helping to expand and protect and ensure good benefits for through these policies. And also procuring goods from neighboring states can help build a regional supply chain that's really strong, that supports workers and communities across this region. So that's equally important too. And we really have two strategies that we use. Our mission is public goods for the most public good. And so we have two ways that we work on that. So at the state government and agency level, we advocate for these public purchasing or procurement policies. We also call these manufacturing careers policies, although like I said, they don't just cover manufacturing, that favor companies who make strong labor and community commitments. So this is an example of what you would call best value procurement. So instead of a bid going to the lowest cost bidder, these policies allow companies to compete up according to the benefits that they can bring. So that can include job creation and training, the creation of permanent long-term facilities, community partnerships, disclosure of job quantity and quality, and enforcement of targeted hire and local hire policies where that's allowed. So targeted hire basically meaning prioritizing access to jobs for people who face barriers to employment specifically. I'm going to also talk a little bit more about some of the work that we're doing to try to expand our ability to do targeted hire and local hire work. So basically, if a public transit agency, for example, is choosing a company to buy electric buses from, if New Jersey Transit, for example, is choosing a company to buy its new electric buses from, they're making their choice according to who commits to invest in the communities where they're operating with permanent facilities, with training, who commits to pay their workers fairly, and who commits to prioritize hiring folks who've been excluded from opportunities in the green economy. We also have organized across the country, and this work is so new in New Jersey, so I'm really looking forward to thinking about it more, but for community benefit agreements. And I know some of y'all are very familiar with CBAs, but what the work that we do is specifically to win these legally binding commitments between employers and the communities where they operate. And there will also be a third party in a CBA who is a union. So the CBA also includes the right for workers at a facility to organize. And the needs that a CBA addresses are always identified by the particular folks working on it in that community, but can include commitment to pay a living wage, union apprenticeship programs and workforce training, environmental justice commitments, locally defined priority populations, so commitments to hire, train, and create access to jobs for folks who face barriers to employment, some of which Andre was speaking to really well before. And we can go further with these kinds of targeted hiring in CBAs than you can in like a state policy. So it's a good opportunity. Like, for example, you can specify race and gender equity in hiring through a community benefit agreement. And so basically these two strategies kind of work together because policies that will help companies investing in US manufacturing and good jobs to win contracts. And then once selected, the company's commitments become actually part of their project And securing a CBA can support the company in following through on these commitments and can also keep the community engaged in a long-term way in the implementation of a CBA. So like workforce development, hiring. And so we often work, Andre just stepped out, but we often work with organizations like ISLES that do workforce development training on the actual implementation community benefit agreements. And so I just want to share one quick concrete example of a CBA that we were able to win recently. And this was really exciting for us because it is a multi-state community benefit agreement. So it covers Anniston, Alabama, and also Ontario, California, which are two very, very different places. And this was 5 years in the making, but basically LA Metro, which is the Los Angeles Public Transit Authority, adopted a manufacturing careers policy in 2018. And that applies to all of their, rail car and bus purchases. And it's anticipated to support up to 22,000 US jobs in the long term. And this recent community benefit agreement came out of that policy, but it covered not only the facility in LA, but also the facility in Anniston, Alabama, which was really exciting for us because the Deep South has historically been a really, really difficult place for worker organizing because of existing laws there. And so we feel like if this is possible in Anniston, Alabama, we think it's possible in loads of other places, certainly possible here in New Jersey. And so really this means that New Flyer, which is the largest bus manufacturer in North America right now and is a leader in electric buses, is committing to work collaboratively to invest in and support the communities where its facilities are located and the New Flyer employees who live there. And so that community benefit agreement establishes goals of 45% of new hires and 20% of promotions at each facility of individuals from groups who've had limited access to good jobs in American manufacturing. And in this one, that specifically includes people of color, women, and veterans, and also returning citizens, which I wanted to mention because Andre was talking a little bit about some of the administrative barriers to green jobs. So this community benefit agreement also includes a ban the box provision, where essentially there is non-discrimination against folks who've been incarcerated or have a record. And also there is a minimum number of returning citizens who are required in this hiring process. So we are going to be collaborating with New Flyer and also with one of our community partners, Greater Birmingham Ministries, to develop more robust training programs that are focused on increasing access to employment and career advancement. And so, yeah, I just wanted to close by sharing that example. It's a newer example, but I'm feeling really excited and hopeful about it because this comes as transit agencies specifically are set to receive billions from last year's infrastructure package and specifically to transition fleets to battery power. So I think that is a tremendous amount of public spending that's set to happen, and we can really leverage that money to make sure that it creates as many good jobs as possible. And also to really make sure that there is long-term accountability for creating good jobs and following through on these hiring commitments. I think I'm probably at my time, but I will just quickly say as well that we also have been doing some work on the federal level to remove federal barriers to cities and states being able to do more aggressive local hire and targeted hire work. There are some things that block that right now. And so we have a webinar specifically for elected officials and for agency folks that's coming up next Tuesday at 2. And I would absolutely love to invite all of you to that. If you come say hi to me after, I can give you all that information. But I think it will be a great opportunity to get into more of the nuts and bolts of how to empower states and cities to do more on equitable hiring and local hire. That's all. Thank you so much.
Alan from Operation Grow and
Hello, can everyone hear me well? My name is Sheronda Allen. I'm an educator. I'm the founder and executive director of Operation Grow Inc., which is a federally tax-exempt New Jersey nonprofit organization. I'm also the co-chair for the Greater New Jersey Gateway Climate Reality Chapter and the co-chair for the Tri-County Sustainability Environmental Justice Committee. And that's just a few of the hats that I wear. So for this particular panel, we're dealing with barriers to green jobs in New Jersey. I believe that it has been a holistic failure that has created barriers to green jobs in New Jersey. Number one, we have failed communities. These conversations are not happening enough in our African-American communities in New Jersey. And I can say African-American communities because many other ethnic communities, they have their own economic systems. They deal with each other in such a way with housing where they can have their own collaborative housing communities with all sorts of situations. Our communities lack viable supermarkets. We have been living in food deserts, although there is a rise in urban farming and urban agriculture, which I'm grateful for. But we also have a problem with not having functioning Sustainable Jersey green teams and communities. Sustainable Jersey was established in order to ensure that communities can do the work of sustainability. That is what is missing in a lot of our communities. We have stagnant politicians who are part of larger machines that don't do the work that needs to be done. These politicians are in place. They say they're about progress, but they are in the road and as an obstacle of progress. And we keep reelecting people. You can't even tell anyone else exactly what they do or what they champion. We need to stop that. That's a problem. And then we have education. We have extreme anti-intellectualism in too many of our communities that don't inform us of how important educating ourselves is to our existence, to our success, to our ability to thrive. We don't have situations of rich academic environments in the home, in the general community, in the school, in the businesses, in the music. A lot of things are about glorifying negativity and counterproductivity. We have historical neglect that endures today. Funds have been infused without accountability. All this CARES Act funding, all this COVID funding. How can any municipality say they don't have enough money to run a youth program or run anything that would help for things to grow? And we have to deal with the expenditures that are going on here. So what are some of the remedies? Civic education. We need to educate our people about their civic duties and responsibilities. I love to refer back to the Niagara movement, their document, the Declaration of Principles. If we follow that from back in 1903, and we use those principles today, we could do an amazing job in all of our communities. We need parenting workshops. We need to focus on youth development in African-American communities. We need to focus on culture and thriving. In my organization, I focus on the SDGs and the Nguzo Saba. So everything we do has something to do with Mission 2030 and culture so that we can make progress and be productive and have prosperity. We need to push for sustainability, human sustainability, knowing that green jobs has everything to do with our health. Economic sustainability. All aspects of green jobs have to do with business. They have to do with increasing our economics and specifically doing the work within the green jobs to install solar panels, building windmills. We have to deal with social sustainability, looking at the impact overall in society of these green jobs. And of course, the environment, to preserve our earth, to preserve the air, the land, the water that we consume. Energy justice, ensuring that you're not looking at somebody's credit score to ensure that they get energy justice, because then they're still going to be left behind. Somebody needs to fix that legislation or that policy in your businesses, because that is, to me, disgusting when you still are looking at a credit score for someone who had the light bill put in their name when they were 9 years old, because there's been a cycle of that repeatedly. We also have to look at filing Oprah requests in your city, ma'am. Let's get some transparency about where this funding is going, who brokered these deals with these agencies who are coming in to further create this environmental injustice in these communities over and over again that are causing these health issues, the lack of academic progress, all the asthma that occurs, purely environmental, and lawsuits. Once you get those Oprah requests, file those lawsuits against those corporations, against those government officials, those government agencies and entities, those who are in the way of the needed progress. There is no way that people are still speaking at city council meetings. It's bigger, it's deeper than a city council meeting because those city councilmen have party bosses. They have people that they have to answer to. We have to hold everyone accountable from the top to the bottom. We can speak at a city council meeting, but we have to put paper in action. The pen is mightier than the sword. So if we want to fix this, these are the things we need to focus on.
Thank you, Mr. Gore, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel here today. My name is Melissa Miles, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, or NJEJA. NJEJA is now in its 20th year of existence here in the state of New Jersey and was founded by organizers and advocates who came together after the second People of Color Congress with the idea in mind that by coming together as communities across the state, they could build power, and that they have done throughout the decades. NJEJA is an organization that really pioneered environmental justice here in the state. I'm here accompanied by my board chair and elder, Dr. Nicky Sheats, who is one of the people who was really the first to begin to talk about the cumulative impact of pollution here in the state, pollution that we see as a result of New Jersey's legacy of industry and pollution that is concentrated in Black and Brown and low income communities throughout the state. So, we're here to give a little bit of additional context to this conversation about clean energy, because there's a reason why we've come to this, both economic and racial, why communities, Black and Brown communities, have been historically subject to more pollution than white communities throughout the country. It goes back to things like redlining, different housing policies, and I really appreciate all the comments that have come before me, because they start to illustrate that it was through policy and practice that we now have communities that are bearing the brunt of New Jersey's industry and some of those things that make it easier for everyone to live. Everything from turning on your lights to, running your tap, that goes somewhere. Your wastewater goes somewhere, your energy comes from somewhere, your trash goes somewhere, your Amazon packages come from somewhere, and all of that impacts our environmental justice communities. So on the issue of energy specifically, we're really fortunate to be a part of some national coalitions where we get to sit and hear from communities at every stage of the energy cycle. So, folks in Louisiana and the Gulf and in the South who are there on the front lines of energy extraction. So where those fossil fuels come out of the ground and where they are, refined. We here in New Jersey have refineries as well, right? But some of those communities are really suffering from that and the added impact of climate change, so that when we see flooding and climate disaster, we see, all the more, suffering in these communities. And then we can bring that all the way up south, to a place like New Jersey, where, we also see how, both pollution and climate disaster are coming together to make it harder for some of our folks to live and survive, combined with the pandemic combined with housing. So, you know, I really appreciate the idea that we're not just talking about energy, right? We're talking about a whole approach that includes education about energy burden. You know, for many Black folks, your energy burden is not just what you're paying in your bill. We are paying more, right? Our communities are paying more because our houses aren't as efficient. And also, we're not qualifying historically for those energy efficient and clean energy programs. But also, you know, we're paying more because of the social burdens that have placed us in these communities, not allowed us, you know, to be able to improve economic conditions. And then we're also housing the energy infrastructure, the polluting power plants, the substations and the transfer stations are also in our community. So we have these multiple impacts of the energy system. So of course, when we talk about transition, which is a just transition from these kind of life extracting economies to life affirming economies, you know, our communities should be first in line. And knowing that we have many panelists and everyone had great things to say, I'm gonna cede some of my time here to Dr. Sheats so that he can add into this conversation.
Thanks, Melissa. My name is, and thanks to all the panelists. I think I'm glad to be the audience of the panelists because everybody has something very interesting to say. So my name is Nicky Sheats. I'm with the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, colleague of Melissa's, and I'm also at Kane University. I work with the Watson Institute for Urban Policy and Research. What we try to do mainly in the environmental justice movement, as Melissa says, we're part of the national grassroots environmental justice movement. We really, one of our focuses is trying to protect our communities of color, low-income communities from pollution. And we recognize the importance of green jobs and we advocate for that. But as important, or maybe more important, is we want to make sure that we have a healthy workforce there for the green jobs. Because the pollution is literally killing our people and making our people sick. And a significant portion of that, one of the panelists alluded to, is the pollution from power plants and from dirty energy. And so we're definitely behind converting to clean energy, but that may take a little while. And in the meantime, we've got to reduce the pollution from these plants now. Because, you know, after we make the conversion, however long it takes, the people that were killed by the pollution, they won't be resurrected, right? They'll still be dead. I hate to be blunt, but that's just the truth. When we win the battle, it won't help them. So we have to minimize the number of deaths and the amount of illness along the way. We recently had, Melissa talked about cumulative impacts. How do you deal with multiple sources of pollution in neighborhoods? And unfortunately, our neighborhoods often have multiple sources of pollution. And we recently had a victory where we have the first cumulative impacts law in the country that says you should turn down pollution permits, application for pollution permits under certain circumstances based on environmental justice and cumulative impacts. There's going to be a second law soon in New York. And so maybe they'll be around the country. And that's a good victory for us, but it's not enough. And let me tell you another area where we need help, and it's in this area of clean energy. We have a climate change mitigation policy that we are putting forth. And it says that if a power plant is located in environmental justice community that's already overburdened, they should be forced to reduce their emissions. Under the current system, that may or may not happen. They might reduce their emissions, they might not. We don't think that's good enough for our communities. They should be forced to reduce their emissions. We call this mandatory emissions reductions. We've taken it to the state for several years, and so far there's been silence. So we need to get a groundswell of support. We're hoping they'll listen to us more in the near future, but you need more than hope. And so we need support from all sectors, particularly from groups like yours that are already into environmental justice and equity. And you know, I know I'm what do you call it, praying to the choir now, right? But we need that tangible support. And so we are certainly supportive of what you're doing. Maybe we can all work together. And we hope that you can support the campaign that we have underway now. But in any case, it's good to meet everybody.
Give you that bump my grandson gives me. This has been so wonderful from all different kinds of perspectives. The public who are joining us virtually have a better understanding of what they need to do in their communities. I think the first thing was most important. You need to go to your legislators, your assembly, your senators, and yes, you need to talk to your mayor and your council, but don't let that be your last move. Your move should be on a state legislative basis. Now, with the primaries just over, you should have voted to put somebody on the national scene to be dealing with these, but it's still not too late because there are write-ins and there are opportunities for you to get your legislators that you voted for to understand that you want their help in doing the kinds of things that we are asking you for today. Solar, sustainable communities of color who are not only doing with pollution, but don't forget about Superfund sites. Those companies that were here for generations and left with billions and billions of dollars of our working force being primarily people of color, Hispanic. When I say color, I mean all ethnic groups that made their billions, and now we're left with the groundswell of pollution that is killing our people. When are we going to stop? Enough is enough on this. But thank you so very much for the varied panel. George Gore, you did an excellent job in terms of pulling together the experts in the field. Now, yes, you want to stand up and ask a question?
This is to, I guess, Sid, the solar guy, and Andre. And I think Nicky hit it on the head that we have to support a healthy workforce in order to support these so-called green jobs. But my question is, how do we bring the community up to snuff in terms of the jobs that are going to be, that you guys are going to have in this new green job? Because most of the jobs are going to require certifications. And along with those certifications, it is going to be unionism. So actually, it's a two-part question. How do we bring them up to snuff to get some of those jobs? And then how do we get them in the union? How do we get the union to let them into the jobs?
Thank you. Can you move the microphones down around so that we can hear?
Yeah, I'll take a first shot and I'll pass it to Andre. The question was that, how to make sure that the community is trained for these emerging technologies. And I think what I talked about earlier, and actually a panelist talked about it, about community benefit agreements, working with groups that actually know what the community needs are, is the most vital part of any type of benefit agreement. As a energy asset manager, clean energy developer, what are we good at? Building clean energy developments, engineering, and so forth. We need to recognize where our limits end. And we need to partner with groups who actually know what the needs are for the local community. And so in a couple of weeks, I want to spill it here, but you will see an announcement of us making a workforce memorandum of understanding with a local workforce development organization right here in Middlesex County, dedicated to training local residents to the upcoming emerging technologies for offshore wind and the green job economy moving forward. I think that's the way to do it. You reach out at a community level. You can't wait until state action, although we know that the state is moving forward and we compliment the administration for everything they're doing. But private developers need to take action as well and need to work with local community members. And the last thing I'll say is that I read off specifically a list of jobs. And a lot of those jobs are highly specialized. But again, I just want to dispel with the myth that green jobs means you need a fancy degree to get into the workforce. You don't. There are jobs out there that can incorporate an easy to access job market. And I think that's the type of advocacy that the Black Issues Convention can help me and others get out there. What are those specific type of jobs? What are the barriers to entries for each? And you'll see that it's not as daunting as we make it out to be.
Okay, thank you. And I will add to that and say, I think partnerships are important. One thing that we did to expand our reach is we reached out to various agencies across the state that have connections to their communities and engage those agencies to connect to the folks from their community to get them in and educate them on what's available, all the green jobs. Hearing conversations like this is motivating to them because I'm on the ground training guys. And I often tell them, I say, you got guys fighting on a policy level, trying to really create a pathway so you guys can get training that is no cost to you. Getting homes renovated and made healthy at no cost to the low income communities is important for them to know how folks are fighting for them on their level. And it motivates those guys on the ground to get involved and engage. I think that's important. But when you get them into the office, one, you vet them out to see where they are. You come where they are. If they have issues with driver's license, childcare, however, they have a desire to work, help get funding to relieve those barriers. But if you have a guy that has a driver's license, has the skills, but he's lacking soft skills, engage them on that level of training. So really come where they are, educate them on what's going on, how folks are fighting for them. I think that really helps. As you mentioned here, all of the various green jobs, I focus on lead and energy efficiency work. But there's often a wide range of things that they're unaware of. So bringing folks to the table that can educate them on all the possibilities, I think motivates a workforce that have been left out. I think is critical.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you both so much. I just wanted to add also that one thing that JMA, Jobs Move America, also tries to do in some of the coalition work that we've done in other states and are really just starting to try to develop here is to kind of serve as a bridge between unions and communities and community groups and folks who do on-the-ground workforce development. And we have many different unions on our board representing like manufacturing, transit, energy sector, and yeah, are really aware that there has been a lot of structural racism and exclusion in unions historically and still. And so that's one of the goals of our coalition work as well. And that's one of the reasons why the community benefits organizing that we do always includes three parties. It's the community coalition, the union, and the company. But we feel that bringing those together is really critical. And for there to be workforce training programs that also become union apprenticeship programs to get folks directly into the union. And those agreements can and should also include things like transportation, soft skills training, childcare, these kinds of like not specifically educational, but other kinds of structural barriers that are often prohibitive for people. So yeah, I would love to talk to you more, Andre, about what you were doing. And I just feel very excited to be in the same room.
I actually add one thing as well. The PSEG jobs on the job training program. We actually just finished our first cohort, and I mentioned it before. It's where they work with our job suppliers. It's 6 months training. So all you come in with is a excitement to learn about the clean energy industry, and we've worked with our job suppliers to identify entry level jobs, but really you don't come in with any experience outside of being excited to participate in this field. And I just want to emphasize the importance of community partners. We were at the end of the graduation, and we were getting feedback from participants, and they were mentioning how they're going to enter the workforce and they'd like maybe a management course or a resume building course, and the importance of community partners that PSEG has found. We work with so many that we were able to have that connection, just ad hoc, like bring in one of our grantees to give a resume building course. We also just had our graduation actually, where, you know, people with absolutely zero experience in the clean energy field, we had 100% placement and 100% completion upon finishing the program. We're about halfway through our second cohort. And yeah, I think that community partnerships are really important not just to the upskilling as well, and making sure you can have those connections between people who are excited and then people who want to help, like the people on the panel. Thank you for all being part of it.
I would like to take this time to introduce to most, but not to everyone, our Assemblywoman from Trenton, Vernina Reynolds Jackson. You know, the things that you're talking about, legislators should know about and work on. She has been working on in Trenton and around the states for years. When she walks in the room and people are saying we need to have help in working on different projects, they're glad that she's here. So we're glad that you're here today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank all of the panelists. First, I want to say happy Juneteenth. We're going to be celebrating freedom for everyone coming up. So I want to start there. And second, thank all of the panelists for all of the information that you're giving. And I'm glad to hear so many partners talk about environmental injustice. And I see my friend, I didn't think I was going to see him today, but I'm excited. I'm glad you're here, Mr. Sheats. And so I want to say the BPU has an obligation. And so it's not just PSEG, it's not just the people that are sitting at this table, to make this equitable. And so as you all are friends of the room, I have to say that I have still not received the numbers. And I say the numbers to see how much has been spent, how many people have been hired, and what is the impact in our communities. That I have not seen. And what I am fearful of is after you build the train, it leaves the station. And so, you know, as much as we love the community benefit agreements, these are conversations that we should be having now before. And so this first round of funding is going out. It is with a B. And so again, we have partners in the room, but I think we can do better and do more. You just had one class going through. I get calls all the time about people looking for work. So I will get your contact information, Riva, and I will be sending those resumes forward. But we have to hold folks accountable. And it is at the local level. It is at the state level. We don't come up with an agenda by ourselves. We fight for the things that are important to our communities. And what's important to our communities benefits everybody. And so we cannot marginalize that in this space right now. So I want to continue to advocate for you to ask the questions before, and that is in our planning boards, that's in our zoning boards. It's before the money gets spent. How do we benefit from that? So I just want to thank you, Riva. I am Verlina Reynolds Jackson, the Assemblywoman from the 15th Legislative District. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You see why? I don't have to say it again. You see why people are happy when she walks in the room. She makes things happen. And I'm so glad to know her and have been talking to her, going all over the state about these various issues that we're bringing today. So we got to get results. We have to get results. We have to not only for us and our generation, but for the legacy that we're leaving behind. We need to have a blueprint for them to be able to look at and say they did their best. And we can't just let one legislative Black caucus meeting be the end of us feeling good, going to our car, going back home and say, yeah, I did good today. No, you haven't done good today. You didn't have done good today when we see some results. Each one of us need to call our legislators and say, we want results on these bills, on these projects, and on these jobs. We want to see, like we had with affirmative action years ago, we asked them to make sure that we got results on what would happen before the end of the year on each category. We need affirmative action done on this. And it's a different kind of affirmative action, but it's one that we really need in order to leave a legacy for our future generations. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I want to check the chat. Thank you. You see, my people tell me what to do, and I love it. Let me see if we have a question in the chat. Yeah, there is a question here. And one question is this. Okay, I said, please remind Tough to get Reba to sign the checks. Tough, don't forget to remind me to sign the checks. Okay, here's another question. I want to make sure that nobody's getting paid today. This is our Black Issues business checks they're referring to. No, that was it. Brenda Lee did send in a little note. She said, speak on it. So that's very good. She's our corresponding secretary. And another question was related to the other panelists that left already. And I see that we've already answered that question. Mr. Gore, do you have comments that you would like to make at this time? That's very unusual, Mr. Gore, that you don't have a comment.
First thing, I want to thank your panelists, and I think the information that you brought to us was good. By the way, this is not going to be the last time. We're going to have to continue this discussion going forward for the rest of the year, as legislation is going to be pending. Things that you know about that we may not know about. We'd like you to at least keep us informed so we can be partners and help you help us and help our community. And again, thank you for coming, and your voices were heard way outside this room. A lot of people were on listening and paying attention. And I think that what you presented to them was maybe a different flavor for what is actually going on out here. I've been familiar with PSEG's program for a long time. Okay, all the way back to John Smith, not that one, but the other John Smith and the other people who've been there. And it's good to see that the programs are continuing. Else, good, keep it up. We can help. We can help anybody else here in this table. NJBIC is here to help you get information out where you don't normally be able to get it out. Sometimes the press listens to us more than they listen to you. Okay, because they know we represent a whole different set of people and organizations, because remember, we're the organization of organizations formed long before I got here. But Reba, thank you very much.
Yes, and good. So with all minds are clear, what our marching orders are, I say that quite often, our marching orders for us to get to our legislators and encourage our businesses and organizations that we belong to, that you're sitting here representing and that everyone is representing, get to their individual memberships and ask them to make the phone call to their assembly and to their senators to make a change on what we know is important. Do you have a comment, Miss Anyone else in the room? Hearing none. Are you doing the benediction? Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna do that after the benediction. Most gracious Heavenly Father, I want you to thank those who are gathered here. I want you to bless those and keep your hands on those who are within the sound of our voice. We ask you, God, to continue to bless this organization, these organizations who are sitting here at the table who've been supportive of us. God, most of all, we ask you to keep us moving in the right direction, in a direction that is pleasing in your sight. We thank you, God, for the things that you have given us, for the protection you have given us, for how we move forward. We ask all these blessings in your Son's name. Amen.